me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been playing the piano?
Um, I've been playing for about 11 years,
Oh,
I
wow,
think.
that's great. Good. And so you're going to play the Mozart, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing you play. So just whenever you're ready, you go ahead. Bravo. Very beautifully played. Um, it's.
Sorry, you're cutting.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, you played it very beautifully. I especially like your articulation. You have really nice variety in your legatos and your staccatos, and I feel like you have a really fine sense of the flow of the piece, of the long sense of long line and big picture, because it's very repetitive, right? So it's difficult to hold it together as one story or as one unit, right? I felt you those in those respects you really did the music justice, so that's great. Um, so, what do you know about Mozart's keyboard style? Have you played much Mozart?
Um, I don't think I've played too much this.
Is this your first or second or somewhere
It's
around?
my third, somewhere like that. Yeah.
Okay. Have you studied a Mozart concerto yet or not?
No.
Okay, well, I'm sure that's probably on the list, right? Down the road, you'll be learning a Mozart concerto at some point, I'm sure. And so, a couple of things to know about, like, first of all, this type of music in general, and then also just generally about Mozart's keyboard writing, right? These are two important things that they're interesting to discuss because they can help you think differently about certain things, and think more orchestrally in general. So Mozart was a master at the piano concerto. I mean, his concertos are considered by many, right, to be these beautiful works of art. They're played everywhere and everyone loves them, and there's a reason why, right? I mean, beyond the fact that his music is extremely beautiful, um, he was at home writing for the stage, right? So his most successful works for the stage were operas, right? And so his operas are loved all over. And then his piano concertos are right up there. And the reason being is he often played them and conducted, right, at the same time. So you had this person, this genius, writing for himself and performing them himself and still able to micromanage and conduct the orchestra, right? It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Um, and then there are certain questions we have to ask, like in the music. The solo piano works are considered also, just like the concertos and operas are considered masterworks, the solo piano works are considered still beautiful, but not as successful, right, as the piano concertos. So when there's an absence of orchestra and there's an absence of voice, in the way his piano was a voice in the concertos. The keyboard works are a little bit like, okay, they're nice, but they don't have that it factor, of the concertos. Now, of course, they're still very beautiful. I'm not saying they're not beautiful, but you have to think about his style of writing. How many dynamics are in the score? Do you find a lot of dynamics?
Um, I think probably about like every 3, 4 lines.
I mean, it's hard. There aren't that many, right? Wouldn't you say that it's kind of sparse on dynamics, right? And so what is there a lot of instead of actual forte and piano? I mean, there's certainly no fortissimo, right? There's no pianissimo.
There's a lot of slurs and I some more like crescendos.
Yeah, there are things that of course we want to do, right? That we naturally do, that we feel with the phrase. And there are things that he wrote, but you're right when you said slurs. There is so much articulation, right? So there's a lot of two-note slurs, there's a lot of staccato, there's a lot of rests in the middle of a phrase, there's some ornaments, a lot of things that are very specific, but the dynamics are very general. Okay? So when we're thinking about the sound for Mozart, we try and find color through the phrasing, like through the slurs and through the staccatos and the legato. And the dynamics are less important in that way, right? So when we have Beethoven, we have fortissimo, we have pianos, we have crescendos, we have all that kind of stuff, right? But for Mozart, we don't have those extremes, right? So also in Bach, if you think of Bach's music, barely any dynamics, right? Part of that is because the instrument wasn't the same, right? The piano evolved over this time period. It was growing very quickly. But also because for Mozart's case, he performed a lot of these pieces and didn't write the dynamics in. So there's all these different reasons. But the music is still very colorful. So what I would like to work on with you is to see if we can find the sound that makes sense to you, that you can create a lot of color in without worrying too much about the contrast between forte and piano. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So we're not going to be so concerned about when he writes P or when he writes F. We're going to be more concerned about looking at the phrasing, looking at the touch, and seeing what that means to you. Okay? So with that, let's hear like the first phrase again. Maybe let's hear up until where this starts. Can you play from the beginning to there, and then we'll work on that much. Good. Okay. Good. Yeah. So when we look at it, right, when the melody repeats, when it repeats, it's pretty much phrased the same way, isn't it? Right? There's no difference. Yeah. The only difference is the very end of the phrase, right? Where he becomes more legato and he concludes the first big phrase. Okay. So in between that, we have this. And what does he do with the phrasing in those two measures in the right hand? How is it phrased?
Well, before it was kind of makes it shorter, I guess. Like the slurs are way shorter than in the past like 7.
That's right. They're shorter and then they become longer in the middle, right? And then shorter again. Okay? So that middle part is that more or less singing than the first part. Is the first part more playful? This part is more singing because it's a longer phrase. See that? So how would the left hand change here? How would you articulate those quarter notes to reflect the change of sound in the right hand? You think they'd be shorter or longer? Exactly, right. So what we do here is hold those quarters for the full value, right? And that will give us a different feeling of the melodic line. But if we play too short, right, we're creating a different mood. See? So that's the difference between color in the sound and dynamic contrast, right? So at this point, we're not really thinking about dynamic contrast. We're just thinking about color, how the length of a note can change the color of a melody, right? So when you play here, these little slurs, how much separation should there be between those two slurs, do you think? How do you like it?
between I I mean I guess I tend to like a little not I guess more space between the two.
Right. So when there's no space, right? Oh, are you there? You're back.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back. Okay.
Um, so I guess I guess I like it with more space.
Right. So what does Mozart write for us? He writes these slurs, so we have to honor them. We have to give space. And then there's this little dot next to the note. Does the dot actually make the dotted note longer, or does it make the 16th note lighter and more graceful? Because if you had a two-note slur without a dot, you'd probably play more on the first note, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But because there's a dot, you give a little bit more gracefulness or playfulness to the first note, but it wouldn't be as loud as if it wasn't followed by a dotted note. See that? So it gives it that lightness, that humor. So just try that and just think about the lightness of the 16ths and the little bit of space you like to have between the groups. Good. Yeah, the first one in particular was really good. It actually takes more energy to play softly than it does to play forte, right? Because the intensity of the sound is more. So that was the first one was really good. And then I think what happened the second time, you were maybe thinking of crescendoing to the A, and so we heard a crescendo in the slur. So let's see if we can keep it light but still feel like we're going to the A. See? Good. Yeah. And then, you know, the difference, we often like to lift at the end of slurs. But actually, he wrote this. Only the C sharp is staccato, not the B, right? All these tiny little differences. And now I'm not saying play the B legato, right? Just don't give it the same sparkle that you're going to save for the C sharp. You're back again.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't.
That's all right. It happens. Hey, I mean, if there's one thing we learned during the pandemic is to be patient, right? It's okay. Right. And that's kind of a hard thing to do. So, you know, we can go down this road and think about all these little things. I don't want you to obsess over them. And certainly I don't want you to play it slower because you had such a great tempo. It's just an awareness of that note to keep it light. Longer. And our instinct is to do this. To crescendo to the A, right? Yeah, that would be your instinct. But when when it's written as a slur and we have that sense of phrasing, we would phrase into the middle or towards the end of the slur and then release a little bit of our tension, a little bit of our sound towards on the last note, right? So again, that's another way to color it. Just a little bit lighter on the A, okay? Ah, nice. See, that was really nice. You responded in the left hand to play a little bit more round and a little bit longer on those quarter notes, right? To hug the phrase of the right hand. That was very good. Now, in this next part, I made you stop here on purpose because this next part, how would you describe the difference in sound that happens in the next 4 or 5 bars before the melody comes back?
I guess it's kind of like um, it feels. It still has that joy, but it's like when you're anticipating something. It's like if it's like when you're a kid and you're going some. It's like to see your friend or something, and you're
Uh-huh.
in the car waiting to get there. It has that kind of anticipation.
I see. Yes, exactly. Good. And then, so I love the fact that you're relating the music to an image or to an emotion because that's what a lot of us do, whether we know it or not, right? And then there's always this big conversation. Well, is music absolute? Meaning, are we only supposed to find inspiration in the notes? Or are we supposed to gain our inspiration of how something should sound through imagery? Well, the answer is we don't know. Both are great, right? There's no right or wrong answer. So I'm going to give you the other side. That's a great image. Now I'm going to give you, through the notes, through the writing, through the composition, what is being shown, right? So if you're thinking of an orchestra, if you're thinking of a piano concerto or even an opera, right? You have your solo voice. Well, now you have the orchestra or a group of instruments with no solo voice. And then solo. See? So there's an opportunity to change the color. So the right hand would not be as singing there, right? As it would be. See? Right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like he put little parentheses, like, oh, this is happening now before the soloist comes back in. Think of it that way and see how you feel about it. And then come in as a solo voice when the melody comes in. So you get to change the color and sing out again. Good. That's right. Good. And so that's another way. One other very important thing that composers used at this time was they really had a connection to keys. Like, for example, Mozart barely wrote in minor keys, right? Do you know that?
Yeah.
There's only a few pieces that are in minor keys. And all of them, so minor keys had a special feeling for Mozart. And so you can say that a lot of keys provided this sense of some emotional response, right? I'm sure even when we hear certain chords or harmonies, we have an emotional response to those sounds, right? And that was something that Mozart just did naturally. So I'm sure, like what you're doing now is you're creating color and dynamic contrast because the harmonies are quite different, right? And so when you respond to this, you know, you see there's that little bit of mystery and doubt when it changes from major to minor, right? And then in the left hand here, would those chords be longer or shorter, do you think, to help the feeling?
It would be
Longer, right? So that you can hear the harmony underneath, right? And if you wanted, you can even put a dab of pedal.
back.
Okay.
um,
I don't know how much
I
you
think
heard. Yeah.
yeah, I think they do longer.
Okay, good. And if you wanted to, you know, you could even put a dab of pedal, so that you have a little bit like a touch of pedal right after a long note so that it rings, a touch of pedal on chords so that they have a little more body and a little more depth to them, right? That's up to you. You don't have to, but you can. The only rule with this style is don't pedal through the rests. That's all, you know. Yeah, parents love this saying. They say, you know, children should be seen and not heard. Do you know what that means, right? Like, be quiet. But, oh, and then the pedal is the same way. You should use the pedal, but don't make me aware that you're using it. See what I mean? Yeah. So try that. See what color you can get with that. Good. Yeah. One small suggestion for the turns, I would probably play them only four notes starting from the D, only because it's a melodic line, so the ornament is more melodic and not rhythmic. So probably something like that, right? So that it's very legato. Nice. That's very nice. Yeah. Keep going a little bit. Go up to the end of the first section now. Let's hear that again. Good. Yeah. You're very musical, and your trill, your is beautiful. It's you got just the right sparkle on the trill. It's wonderful. That's not easy to do. So that's great. Keep that. When you play this, may I ask what fingering you're using on the left hand slurs?
So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ah, okay.
1, 2.
Right. So I was just thinking, to make the slurs more uniform, you can use the same fingering for each one. And either 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. But I kind of like 1 and 2 if it works for you because you're allowed to lift in between them anyway. Right. So what I would do is to keep them lively is to have a quicker finger articulation without the weight of your hand. Your hand is adding weight into the note, so it's slowing your rhythm down a little. That's better already, yeah. If you kind of hold your wrist stationary, I call it a quiet wrist. It's not a stiff wrist. It's just quiet, meaning it doesn't involve in the making of the sounds. Here, just the fingertips. And that'll lighten up this lightness, just to have this sparkle and lightness. And then I'm going to ask you a question. These scales, that's definitely, dramatic. That's dramatic too, right? But in relation to everything else we're saying and the way we're telling the story, how much actual volume, how much actual forte do we need? Maybe there's another way to make it dramatic without so much forte at that point. See what I mean? And maybe those are a little bit longer staccatos, almost like someone knocking at the door, It's a little dramatic in that way. Yeah. Try that, experiment with that, and let's see. Yeah, and what you did now was really good because the minute you made those staccatos a little longer, they sounded more melodic. They sounded more like you were singing them. And so that changed your sound right away, which is great. And then Mozart loves to say goodbye. That's one of his favorite things to do, like wave goodbye, the curtain's closing, bye, bye, everybody says bye. So this closing part after the trill, the piece could end there. The section could end there. But he does this. He says bye 3 times, right? With those top E's. So think about it. Just by the nature of repeating oneself, right? When you say, hey, 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 you're going to say it a little bit differently, more intensely or more attentively, whatever. Let's see what you come up with. Just don't even think louder or softer. Just go with what you're feeling. Good, very nice. You're very musical, and you're very quick, at that. And I think Mozart was like that too. I don't think he was much of a thinker. He was a doer. He lived his life pretty fast. I mean, the rate with which he composed things was astonishing, right? And I think Mozart had that in him. He never stopped to think, how am I going to make this different? He just would naturally do it differently because that's what he would do, right? It's as normal as speaking. And so there is this sense of natural speaking in Mozart where you don't really have to plan things out too much. You just have to kind of look out for things and react to them, right? So that was very good. Let's see, we're almost finished here, so we have a few more minutes, and I wondered if there were any questions about anything that we talked about today, or something I didn't touch on that maybe would be helpful for you.
Um, I don't know. I can't really think of
That's
something.
okay. Like I say, I really liked it a lot. You know, there are certain things, just to wrap up, like when you're thinking about where to put pedal. I think you. Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I just
Yes,
wanted to
yes.
wrap up by saying, where places where things could be longer or more sustained, or where you could use a little more pedal. So look for places like that. So here, sometimes just a more of a sense of line in the left hand, a longer pedal, is something like that will help hone your sound a little bit so that when it's dramatic and when it's forte, you still keep the lyricism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this ending is so beautiful. He says goodbye again. What's really great about it is he introduces a brand new melody. Right here. That's so beautiful. We've never heard that. That's just so charming, right? So you can be even more humorous with those C sharps, I think. Do you want to just play the ending again?
Yeah. Um,
Right. I wondered a question for the repeated note. If you change the finger lightly and bounce your wrist, you'll get a different color. Save the weakest finger for the last C sharp, right? Because you want it to be the softest. That was nice. That's right. Yeah, that sense of dance and that sense of lilt to the sound, right? Beautiful. Well, congratulations. You're a wonderful pianist and very responsive and intelligent. So, good luck to you. Are you going to go on in music, do you think, or you're not sure yet?
um, I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have the ability, so that's great.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It was a pleasure to hear you today.
Thank, thank you.
All right.